Dies Irae is a Latin hymn attributed to either Thomas of Celano of the Franciscan Order or to Latino Malabranca Orsini, lector at the Dominican studium at Santa Sabina, the forerunner of the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas, Angelicum in Rome. The hymn dates from at least the 13th century, though it is possible that it is much older, with some sources ascribing its origin to St.Gregory the Great, St.Bernard of Clairvaux, or St. Bonaventure. It is a medieval Latin poem characterized by its accentual stress on its rhymed lines. The meter is trochaic. The poem describes the day of judgment, the last trumpet summoning souls before the throne of God, where the saved will be delivered and the unsaved cast into eternal flames. The hymn is best known from its use as a sequence in the Roman Catholic Requiem Mass. An English version is found in various Anglican communion service books. The melody is one of the most quoted in musical literature, appearing in the works of many diverse composers. Used in the Roman liturgy. The Dies Irae was used in the Roman liturgy as the sequence for the Requiem Mass for centuries, as evidenced by the important place it holds in musical settings such as those by Mozart and Verdi. It appears in the Roman Missal of 1962, the last edition before the implementation of the revisions that occurred after the Second Vatican Council. As such, it is still heard in churches where the Tridentine Latin liturgy is celebrated. It also formed part of the traditional liturgy of All Souls' Day. In the reforms to the Roman Catholic liturgy ordered by the Second Vatican Council, it was retained only in part by the Concilium for the implementation of the Constitution on the Liturgy, the Vatican body charged with drafting and implementing the reforms. It remains as a hymn ad libitum in the Liturgy of the Hours during the last week before Advent, divided into three parts for the office of readings, Lauds and Vespers. Nevertheless, the Concilium felt that the funeral rite was in need of reform and eliminated the sequence as such from the Masses for the dead. A leading figure in the post-conciliar liturgical reforms, Archbishop Annibale Bugnini, explains the mind of the cardinals and bishops who were members of the Concilium. They got rid of texts that smacked of a negative spirituality inherited from the Middle Ages. Thus they removed such familiar and even beloved texts as the Liberami Domini, the Dies Irae, and others that overemphasized judgment, fear, and despair. These they replaced with texts urging Christian hope and arguably giving more effective expression to faith in the resurrection. Text. The Latin text below is taken from the Requiem Mass in the 1962 Roman Missal. The first English version below, translated by William Josiah Irons in 1849, albeit from a slightly different Latin text, replicates the rhyme and meter of the original. This translation, edited for more conformance to the official Latin, is approved by the Catholic Church for use as the funeral Mass sequence in the liturgy of the Anglican Order and Ariad. The second English version is a more formal equivalence translation, because the last two stanzas differ markedly in structure from the preceding stanzas. Some scholars consider them to be an addition made in order to suit the great poem for liturgical use. The penultimate stanza Lacrimosa discards the consistent scheme of rhyming triplets in favor of a pair of rhyming couplets. The last stanza Piesu abandons rhyme for asnins, and, moreover, its lines are catalectic. In the liturgical reforms of 1969 to 71, stanza 19 was deleted and the poem divided into three sections, 1 to 6, 7 to 12 and 13 to 18. In addition, Qui Mariam absolvesti in stanza 13 was replaced by Peccatrisum qui solvesti, so that line would now mean, You who freed, absolved the sinful woman. In addition, a doxology is given after stanzas 6, 12 and 18, manuscript sources. The text of the sequence is found, with slight verbal variations, in a 13th century manuscript in the Biblioteca Nazionale at Naples. It is a Franciscan calendar missal that must date between 1253 and 1255, for it does not contain the name of Clare of Assisi, who was canonized in 1255, and whose name would have been inserted if the manuscript were of later date. Inspiration. A major inspiration of the hymn seems to have come from the Vulgate translation of Zephaniah chapter 1 verses 15 to 16. Other images come from Revelation chapter 20 verses 11 to 15, Matthew chapter 25 verses 31 to 46, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 verses 16, 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 7, Luke chapter 21 verse 26, etc. For the Jewish liturgy, the prayer Unni Tanna Tokaf appears to be related. We shall ascribe holiness to this day, for it is awesome and terrible. The great trumpet is sounded, etc. Other translations. A number of English translations of the poem have been written and proposed for liturgical use. A very loose Protestant version was made by John Newton. It opens. Jan Kasperowicz, a Polish poet, wrote a hymn entitled Dies Irae, which describes the Judgment Day. The first 6 lines follow the original hymn's meter and rhyme structure, and the first stanza translates to, "The trumpet will cast a wondrous sound." The American writer Ambrose Bierce published a satiric version of the poem in his 1903 book Shapes of Clay, preserving the original meter but using humorous and sardonic language. For example, the second verse is rendered, "Ah, what terror shall be shaping when the judge the truth's undraping, cats from every bag escaping." Rev. Bernard Callan, an Irish priest and poet, translated it into Gaelic around 1800. His version is included in the Gaelic prayer book, The Spiritual Rose. Literary references. Walter Scott used the first 2 stanzas in the 6th canto of his narrative poem, The Lay of the Last Minstrel. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe used the 1st, the 6th and the 7th stanza of the hymn in the Scene Cathedral in the first part of his drama Faust. Oscar Wilde's sonnet on hearing the Dies Irae sung in the Sistine Chapel contrasts the terrors of red flame and thundering depicted in the hymn with images of life and love. In Gaston Leroux's 1910 novel The Phantom of the Opera, Eric has the chant displayed on the wall of his funereal bedroom. Music. Musical settings. The words of Dies Irae have often been set to music as part of the Requiem service. In some settings, it is broken up into several movements. In such cases, Dies Irae refers only to the first of these movements, the others being titled according to the respective first words. The original setting was a somber plain chant. In 4-line pneumatic notation, it begins. In 5-line staff notation, the same appears. The earliest surviving polyphonic setting of the Requiem by Johannes Ockeghem does not include a Dies Irae. The first polyphonic settings to include the Dies Irae are by Enguerrandus Juvenus and Antoine Brummel, to be followed by many composers of the Renaissance. Later, many notable choral and orchestral settings of the Requiem Mass, including the Dies Irae, were made by composers such as Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Hector Berlioz, Giuseppe Verdi, Gaetano Donizetti, and Igor Stravinsky. Musical quotations. The traditional Gregorian melody has been used as a theme, a musical quotation, in many classical compositions, film scores, and popular works, including Charles Valentin Alcan, Souvenirs, Toi morceau dans le genre pathétique, Op. 15, Ernest Bloch, Suite Symphonie, Hector Berlioz, Symphonie Fantastique. Johannes Brahms, 6 pieces for piano, Opus 118, No. 6, Intermezzo in E-flat minor. George Crumb, Black Angels. Michael Dougherty, Metropolis Symphony 5th Movement, Red Cape Tangard, Dead Elvis for bassoon and chamber ensemble, Luigi Dalla Piccola, Canti di Prigionia, Ino Donani, No. 4 of 4 Rhapsodies for piano, Op. 11, Diamanda Galas, Mask of the Red Death, Part 1, The Divine Punishment, Donald Grantham, Baron Samata Aries Mambo, Charles Gounod, Faust Opera Act 4, Joseph Haydn, Symphony No. 103, The Drumroll, Bernard Herrmann, Jason and the Argonauts, quoted during the scene of the scattering of the Hydra's teeth, Gustav Holst, The Planets Movement 5, Saturn, the Bringer of Old Age, Arthur Honegger, The Dance des Morts, H. 131, Gottfried Harpitz, Score for Metropolis, Aram Khachaturian, Symphony No. 2 in E minor, Franz Liszt, Totentanz, Gustav Mahler, Symphony No. 2, Movements 1 and 5, Modest Mussorgsky, Songs and Dances of Death, No. 3, Trepak, Nikolai Myaskovsky, Symphony No. 6, Opus 23, Piano Sonata No. 2 Op. 13, Lionel Newman, Compulsion, Sergei Rachmaninoff, Symphony No. 1, Opus 13, Symphony No. 2, Opus 27, Symphony No. 3, Opus 44, Isle of the Dead, Op. 29, The Bells Choral Symphony, Op. 35, Rhapsody on a Theme of Paganini, Opus 43, Symphonic Dances, Op. 45, Ottorino Respighi, quoted near the end of the second movement of Impressioni Brasiliane, Camille Saint-Saëns, Danse Macabre, Symphony No. 3, Dmitri Shostakovich, Symphony No. 14, Stephen Sondheim, Sweeney Todd, quoted in the accompaniment to The Ballad of Sweeney Todd and Epiphany, Kai Khosrow Shapurji Sorbji, Sequentia Cyclica Super, Dies Irae ex Missa Pro Defunctus and 8 other works, Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, Manfred Symphony, Orchestral Suite No. 3, Mario Castelnuovo Tedesco 24 Capricos de Goya, Opus 195, 12. No Hubba Remedio, Dmitri Tiomkin in the score to the Alfred Hitchcock movie I Confess, 1953. Eugene Ysaye, Solo Violin Sonata in E minor, Opus 27, No. 2, Obsession,